We know him as the final messenger, the seal of the prophets, the man who changed the course of human civilization with a recitation in a cave. But before he was any of those things, he was a husband, a father, a grandfather, a man who buried his mother at 6 years old, who buried his father before he was born, who watched 6 of his children leave this world before he did. The biography of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is the most studied human life in history. And yet the story of his family, the people who held him, who sacrificed beside him, who carried the weight of prophethood from inside his home, is the story most of us have only partially heard. This is that story. Muhammad ibn Abdullah, peace and blessings be upon him, was born into loss. His father Abdullah died before his birth. His mother Amina died when he was 6. His grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, who took him in and loved him with the particular tenderness of a man who had already buried too much, died when he was 8. By the age of 8, he had known 3 griefs that would break most adults, and he had known them as a child, without language for what he was carrying. He came to adulthood known throughout Mecca as Al-Amin, the trustworthy, a man of such character that merchants trusted him with their wealth and strangers trusted him with their disputes. A man at peace with himself in a society that was deeply at war with its own values. And into this man's life, when he was 25 years old, walked a woman who would become the foundation of everything that followed. Khadijah bint Khuwaylid was 40 years old when she proposed marriage to a 25-year-old man who worked for her trading company. She was twice widowed. She was the most successful merchant in Mecca. She needed nothing from this marriage except what she had already seen in him, his character. For 25 years, he took no other wife. In a society where polygamy was not merely permitted but expected of men of his standing, he chose her, only her, every day, for 25 years. And then came the night that changed everything. He returned from the cave of Hira trembling. The first revelation had come and gone and left him shaking with something he had no name, for terror, awe, confusion, the weight of something too large to hold alone. He ran to her, and she held him. Not with theology, not with proclamations, with her arms, her certainty, and 7 words that became the first declaration of faith in Islamic history. She said, "By Allah, he will never disgrace you." She did not wait for proof. She did not ask for signs. She looked at the man she had known for 25 years, and she believed immediately, completely, without condition. The first Muslim on earth was not a warrior, was not a scholar, was not a young man full of zeal for a new cause. The first Muslim on earth was a 40-year-old businesswoman who had earned everything she had and chose to risk all of it, her wealth, her reputation, her social standing, for a revelation her husband had received in a cave. And he found you lost and guided you, and he found you poor and made you self-sufficient. Surah Ad-Duha 93-7-8. She spent her fortune on the early Muslim community. She fed them, sheltered them, and sustained the dawah with her wealth during the years when it had almost nothing else. And when she died after years of boycott, poverty, and persecution beside him, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, called that year the year of sorrow. Not the year of loss, the year of sorrow. Because what he lost when he lost Khadijah was not merely a wife, it was the witness to his becoming. After Khadijah's death, the Prophet's companions urged him to remarry. He was carrying the weight of prophethood, the care of 4 daughters, and a grief so deep that he continued to honor Khadijah, openly sending gifts to her friends, speaking of her with love for the rest of his life. The first woman he married after her was Sawda bint Zam'a, a widow who had made hijrah to Abyssinia with her first husband, only to return and find him dead, her family hostile to her new faith, and herself utterly alone. The Prophet married her not from passion, but from protection, from the recognition that this woman had sacrificed everything for Islam and deserved to be held by it in return. Later, when age brought hardship to Sawda, she made one of the most quietly extraordinary decisions in the entire Seerah. She gave her designated night with the Prophet to Aisha voluntarily, simply because she wanted to ensure his happiness. She asked for nothing in return except to remain his wife, to remain in his household, to remain near him. That is not a footnote. That is a woman of profound spiritual maturity, doing something that most people cannot name because they have no category for it. And then there was Aisha. She was his only virgin wife. She was the daughter of his closest friend. She was, by her own account, deeply and unambiguously his favorite after Khadijah, a fact he never denied and she never minimized. She asked him once, directly, who he loved most. He said, "Your father." She pressed further, and among women, he said, "You." She was also one of the most intellectually remarkable human beings of her era. She narrated over 2,000 hadiths. She corrected scholars. She taught men who had been companions of the Prophet for decades. She became, after his death, one of the primary channels through which his sunnah reached the world, including the intimate details of how he prayed at night, how he treated his family, how he wept in his private devotion. We know the Prophet in his private moments, largely because Aisha was there and she remembered everything. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, had 7 children, 6 with Khadijah, 1 Ibrahim with Maria al-Qibtiyya, the Coptic woman, gifted to him by the ruler of Egypt. Of his 7 children, 6 died before him. His sons Al-Qasim and Abdullah died in infancy. When Al-Qasim died, the enemies of Islam mocked the Prophet as Abtar cut off, without legacy, a man whose line would end with him. The Quran responded to that mockery with Surah Al-Kawthar, 3 verses that promised the Prophet an abundance so vast that it is his mockers who are cut off, not him. But the Quran's response did not make the grief less real. He held those boys. He buried them. He continued delivering revelation to a people who used his children's deaths as weapons against him. And then came Ibrahim, born in Medina, a son in his old age after years of watching his male children die in infancy. The companions described the Prophet carrying Ibrahim, kissing him, pressing his face against his. A man in his 60s, rediscovering what it felt like to hold a son who was still alive. Ibrahim died at 18 months. The day he died, there was a solar eclipse over Medina. The people whispered that the sun itself was mourning the Prophet's son. He stood before them and said, "The sun and the moon do not eclipse for the death or birth of any person, but I have eyes, and they weep, and the heart grieves, and we say only what pleases our Lord." He did not perform grief. He did not suppress it. He held both simultaneously, the human father weeping for his son, and the Prophet who would not allow his community to attach divine meaning to a personal loss. That is the hidden sacrifice, not the battles, not the persecutions. The quiet, continuous cost of being a prophet who was also a father in a life that took children, took friends, took the woman he loved, and asked him to keep going. Of all his children, only one survived him. Fatimah, his youngest daughter with Khadijah, the one he called the peace of me. She watched her mother die when she was young. She watched her father endure persecution, loss, and the weight of carrying a message that cost him everything he loved. And she did not stand at a distance from any of it. She walked into it with him. There is a moment in the Seerah during the years of boycott in the valley of Abu Talib, when the Muslim community was blockaded, starving, reduced to eating leaves, where young Fatimah is described caring for her father, bringing him what little existed, sitting beside him in a suffering that had no end in sight. She was a child. and she chose to remain. In the final days of his life, he called her to him privately and whispered something in her ear. She wept. He called her back and whispered again. She smiled. When asked afterward what he had said, she replied, "He told me he would die soon. Then he told me I would be the first of his family to follow him." She smiled at the news of her own imminent death, because it meant she would not be separated from him for long. Fatimah died 6 months after her father. Some accounts say she died smiling. "Indeed, we have given you al-Kawthar, so pray to your Lord and sacrifice. Indeed, your enemy is the one cut off." Surah al-Kawthar 108 to 1-3. He was not cut off. His legacy did not end. It runs through Fatimah and through the hundreds of millions who carry his sunnah today, who speak his name with Salawat, who name their children after him, who feel, when they hear his story told honestly, something that is not merely admiration, something closer to love. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is often discussed in terms of victories, the conquest of Mecca, the expansion of Islam, the transformation of an entire civilization within a single generation. All of that is true, and none of it captures what it cost him personally. The women who believed in him before the world did. The children he held and then buried. The daughter who smiled at the news of her own death because it meant she would find him again. This is the family behind the final messenger. And knowing them, truly knowing them, changes how you hear his name. Send salawat upon him today, not as a ritual, as a response to what you just heard.